Welcome into this special edition of the Fast Lane. Trey Lau here with you. Time to preview Virginia Tech versus Pitt in a game with heavy ACC Coastal Division significance. Feels like this game is always a part of that. I mean, basically every game, the Coastal, the way they're so close every year is like that. But this might have a sense of the winner will be representing the team in Charlotte on the Coastal side. Joining me is Jonny McGonigal from the Pittsburg Post Gazette. He's on the beat for Pitt. And let's jump right in. The Kenny Pickett hype has never been higher. You know, he's been connected to the Heisman, and this is a guy who's played ever since, you know, I was in college when he came onto the scene, like just to point that out. So I've hence graduated and have worked for 2 years. This just shows how long he's been here. Do you think this is finally kind of the breakthrough moment for Kenny Pickett? You know, he's had the flashes of what we've seen this season, obviously throughout his career, but it's kind of like all coming together for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Trey. Yeah, Kenny has been around Pitt for a while. I mean, he's been synonymous with Pitt for the last 4 years, 5 years. He even joked with me when we sat down for an interview back in June that he feels like everyone thinks he's been around for a decade when it's, you know, he's really a fifth-year senior, but he's played in so many games. And yeah, his career has really built to this moment, and this moment being this season. He's always wanted to win an ACC championship. That's the reason why he decided to come back. He could have left after the 2020 season, and yeah, he would have been a day 3 pick. But he had a Senior Bowl invite, and he would have been drafted into the NFL. And he took advantage of the COVID year, the extra year of eligibility, and yeah, he's playing at a ridiculously high level right now. It's really hard to overstate that. You know, you can nitpick and look at, you know, the competition that Pitt has played so far. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. And this weekend is obviously a big one down at Virginia Tech. But Kenny's been playing at a, you know, very high level right now, and we'll see if it happens again this weekend.
It has a sense that these teams have been kind of going in opposite directions since the start of the season. Obviously, Pitt had, you know, 2 wins to start the year, including Tennessee, but that loss to kind of Western Michigan kind of sank their ships. But then they've been able to rebound, and the big win over Georgia Tech kind of built the momentum back up, whereas Virginia Tech kind of has lost momentum. They, you know, the big win against North Carolina to start the year, and then losses to West Virginia and Notre Dame kind of, and not great performance against lesser opponents, had the Hokies kind of going in the opposite direction. Given that sense, this seems like the game, especially in the Coastal, that Virginia Tech's just going to win. Do you get the sense of that? Is that something you could see happening?
You know, it's a tough one to get a read on because you look at this series, it's split 4-4 ever since Pitt joined the ACC back in 2013. You know, I'm leaning towards Pitt here just because I look at the two offenses, and, you know, Pitt's offense, obviously 52.4 points per game, most of the country. And the way that Kenny Pickett's playing, they even been able to run the ball situationally well, closing out the game down at Tennessee. They have that experience of going on the road in a big Power 5 matchup. And like you mentioned, Virginia Tech is kind of reeling right now. Even that win against North Carolina, obviously on paper, it is a top 10 win because North Carolina was a preseason number 10 in the country. But I mean, we've seen North Carolina really fall off here and not look the way that I thought they were going to look this season, the way many thought they were going to look this season. A lot of people before the season circled this weekend. The game they had circled this weekend was North Carolina-Miami as de facto ACC Coastal, you know, title game, and that game will decide who plays Clemson in the ACC championship. None of that seems like it's realistic right now. You know, on a Clemson end, they're not looking good, and North Carolina-Miami, this game this weekend could very well decide the Coastal and decide who ultimately plays for the conference title. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this thing plays out. I'm leaning Pitt, just given the way the offense is playing. And I think the defense, although it has its holes and obviously gave up 44 points in a loss to Western Michigan, I think despite giving up some big plays, it can create enough big plays to kind of offset those.
Yeah, you touched on it, and we'll go into the picks a little later on in a couple minutes. But to me, it boils down to Pitt's offense against a very much improved, especially from last season, Virginia Tech defense. And looking at Kenny Pickett's numbers, you know, last year, 35-52, 404 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. In the other win, he was 7-11 for 162, 1 touchdown. But that was a game where, I mean, I think I could have been a running back for Pitt and got maybe like $150 with a score in that game. It kind of felt maybe not $150. I'm really slow. 50 yards. You know, I could have had a decent day. least got in the end zone.
A goal line touchdown, maybe.
Yeah, that's it, even though I'm a little dude. But 558 yards of total offense versus 330 yards and 190 yards passing. And this is a really good secondary. Jermaine Waller leads the tied for the lead in the country in interceptions, and he's an NFL defensive back. And Justin Hamilton finally getting a full offseason has kind of been able to install his defense. So that's really the matchup of this game, and where, people looking at it is going to look to. And so my question is, where has, talking to the offense, where have they seen kind of their strengths? Is it maybe the rushing game, the screen game, which has shown kind of been the best success against this defense?
Yeah, obviously, like you mentioned, the screen game last year, DJ Turner, who's he's not with Pitt anymore. He's I believe on the practice squad with the Las Vegas Raiders. Out of the slot, when Jordan Addison didn't play in that game last year, he had 15 catches, I think, and it was just little dinks and dunks just downfield. That's not really how Pitt, their offense, has operated or has had success so far this season. They've been pushing the ball, downfield, and even in the deep intermediate range, the 16 to 20-yard throws and getting yards after the catch. I mean, Kenny Pickett, last I checked, I believe is second in the country, or at least before Pitt's bye week, second in the country in completions of 20 yards or more. And you contrast that with Virginia Tech, and like you mentioned, Waller and the secondary that they've, the Hokies have. They've given up only 19 plays of 20-plus yards total, which is tied for second fewest in the ACC. So I think that's where the game is going to be won or lost is, hey, is Pitt able to, on the road in a difficult environment with an offensive line that has been protecting Kenny Pickett better this season than it ever has, are they going to be able to push the ball downfield and create those big plays? I mean, Kenny had 7 throws of 20 yards or more against Georgia Tech. Obviously, that was a game that was a blowout. If he's able to get 4 or 5 of those throws in Lane Stadium, I think Pitt gets it done offensively. And if he only gets 2, then I think you're looking at a really tight game. So I think that's where it will really be decided is, does Pickett and really their wide receivers, because, we talk about Jordan Addison, Taysier Mack, even tight end Lucas Krull, very talented group. Who wins that matchup in the secondary?
And moving to the other side of the ball, this has been a very much struggling unit for Virginia Tech. The quarterback situation is very fluid at the moment. You have Braxton Burmeister, who's nursing basically a shoulder injury for the last couple of weeks. They've had to upgrade true freshman Taj Bullock to basically, maybe the backup to the third string role. This is a team at times that have shown flashes of it, and you have a great article kind of proving this game that Virginia Tech has not really hit big plays, but they seem to have a history of it against Pitt. And that's kind of maybe what boils down for it. Will the Pitt defense, which at times has given up big plays, as you already talked about, can Virginia Tech hit those? And what do you see kind of in the opposite side of the ball?
Yeah, that's where if Virginia Tech is going to win this game, they have to hit a few plays of 30 yards or more, because even in the 28-0 win, obviously that nasty, rainy, muddy game a couple of years ago, they were able to hit on a 70, they being Virginia Tech, able to hit on a 71-yard pass to Tavion Robinson, and that set up a short touchdown. They were able to hit on a 32-yard reverse, and that set up a touchdown. And that accounted for nearly half of their offensive yards that game. So even though, Virginia Tech is not hitting on those 30-yard plays this season, I believe they only have 6 so far, which is tied with Vanderbilt. You never want to be tied with Vanderbilt in anything related to football. But if they're able to hit those big plays, then I think you have a real game on your hands here, a real tight game. And, like you mentioned, and like I mentioned earlier, Pitt's defense is susceptible to those, especially in the RPO game. That's what they were really gashed defensively by Western Michigan, and their quarterback, Caleb Eleby, was putting the ball on the money. So obviously Braxton Burmeister is going to have a solid day himself and an accurate day. But that's an area where Pitt's defense really, look, they put their corners on an island. They run either zone or man with their safeties. And their linebackers, more often than not, especially on RPOs, they sell out to stop the run and pressure the quarterback. So the linebackers will get sucked up to the line of scrimmage. And if you have an accurate, decisive quarterback running those RPOs and hitting slants over the middle, just over the heads of the linebackers, then you're going to have some success. But if you have a quarterback that's not necessarily decisive or really knows what to do with the ball, and he takes a second or two to figure out what's going on, he's already sacked. He's already getting hit. So I think, whether or not Justin Fuente is able to scheme up some different looks, some fake quarterback run and protection, roll out and throw across the field, like those kind of interesting different plays to catch Pitt off guard. And if they're able to hit on those and they're able to hit on the RPOs, then they've got something going. But if they're not, I think Pitt's defense will be okay.
You kind of touched on it, with how Virginia Tech's big playability, but they have still, the offensive line has been improved and the rushing game has been kind of, where they've shown flashes of ability. How do you think Pitt's defense will be keyed in on the run? Obviously, the quarterback's probably less mobile than the coaching staff has expected him to be coming into the season. So do you expect, maybe we touched on a little bit the big plays, but the rushing game kind of could be the key again, another key for Virginia Tech?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think if Virginia Tech's going to find success offensively, they have to do what they do best. And like you mentioned, it's running the ball, it's getting some consistency there, and hitting on those kind of buck sweeps on the outside, getting their guys in space and getting the job done. The one thing there is, and the one thing I'm really most interested in watching from Pitt's defensive side and Virginia Tech's offensive side of the ball when those two are on the field. Pitt's linebackers, I said it before the season, and I still think it. I think it's the deepest group of linebackers in the ACC. Servassier Dennis is running in the middle right now, and he had 14 and a half tackles for loss last year. Cam Bright and Phil Campbell are two speedy linebackers who know how to blitz, who know how to fit their gaps. They're both super seniors. Even Chase Pine, Wendell Davis. These guys are just really talented. John Patrician as well as a seventh-year senior. It's an experienced group and it's a quick group and a group that knows how to anticipate, even like running back passes out of the backfield. They're really good at diagnosing plays and getting after it and stopping yards. Or stopping plays at the line of scrimmage or just beyond it or just behind it. So I think if Virginia Tech is able to disguise well and run the ball well, then you're looking at, like I said, like a very interesting game here. Or at least that could be a plus for Virginia Tech. But, really the strength of Pitt's defense, I would argue, is the linebackers and their ability to diagnose quick and make plays.
Speaking of linebackers, flipping back to the other side of the ball, no Dax Hollifield for the first half, obviously. Yes, no Dax because of a targeting call in the second half against Notre Dame. How do you think Pitt will be able to exploit kind of, not having their Virginia Tech's quote unquote middle linebacker, whatever you want to call it, early in that game and kind of maybe hopefully try to build a lead early and then control it?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a really tough loss for Virginia Tech. Like you said, the Mike linebacker is just so important for any defense and getting everyone set and having everyone ready. And in a big game like this where, the tone can be set in the first quarter, really. We saw that, at least I saw that when I was down in Atlanta for the Pitt Georgia Tech game. Pitt jumped out to a massive lead. Now, part of that was, they had a pick six and all that, but Pitt's offense wants to get started like early and hot. They weren't able to do that against Tennessee and had to come back from behind and win that game. But without Dax Hollifield in there, like if Pitt's offense is able to really work the middle of the field even, and that's kind of where Jordan Addison, the star receiver for Pitt, who's tied for the lead nationally with 9 touchdown catches, he's running out of the slot and he's really made his hay over the middle, sitting in zone coverage, finding those pockets of space, and Kenny Pickett understanding where to put the ball exactly. If they're able to pick apart that, and then you kind of open things up on the outside and get the running game going through the passing game, then I think Pitt can have some success early. Virginia Tech, if they're able to keep this thing, whether they have a lead or it's a tight game, a one-score game at halftime, I think they'd be pretty happy with that, getting Hollifield back for the second half.
Well, you touched on where you're leaning. Five. This line opened as a pick'em, and I looked and was like, "What? Or did you not watch Virginia Tech football at all this year, Vegas?" And it quickly, I mean, as quick as as it possibly could, move to 5 in favor of the Pitt Panthers. 57.5 is the over/under. So you still lean in Pitt. Do you think they'll be able to cover the 5 points? Do you think this is gonna be a relatively close game?
Look, I think it has the potential to be a close game. These two teams obviously play each other. They play each other every year, and it's an intense game for both sides, and it's going to be a a cool environment. I was only in Lane Stadium 2 years ago. That's the only time I've ever been. And I believe that was Thanksgiving weekend. Like I said, it was rainy. So it wasn't quite the atmosphere that I'm hoping to see just as a neutral bystander here this weekend. But I'm leaning Pitt here. I'm picking Pitt. I think they cover. I think it's one of those where I think Kenny Pickett keeps this thing rolling. Do they put up 40 or more points for a 6th straight game? They've been paid. I don't think so. I think, but maybe just a little lower. I'm going Pitt 38, and I'll say 38-17.
Ooh.
A little reverse Fetty Wap, 17-38. I really think Pickett's going to ball out again. And like I said, like I like Burmeister. I like the way he plays. He's a tough guy. But I think Pitt's defense ends up with a pick or two, and they're able to ride this thing out and really become the favorite in the ACC or ACC Coastal, throughout the rest of the season here.
I said this all week that it'd be peak Pitt and peak Virginia Tech for Virginia Tech to win this game, and that's how the Coastal works. But
yep.
As always, how can our listeners, Virginia Tech fans, connect with you? And before we get in that, before I say that, skeptics out there, you have an article I saw and I read a little bit about the ACC hot seats, and you highlighted Justin Fuente, and so a lot of Tech fans might agree if you think he might be on his way out coming here. So how can our fans connect with you as we lead into game week or game day? I should say it is game week.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find kind of all my stories on post-gazette.com and just go to the sports and Pitt tab, or you can hop on. I'm on Twitter at JMcGonigal9, and that's JMCGONIGAL 9. My DMs are open. If you're angry for me picking Pitt, go ahead and tell me what you think. But yeah, looking forward to be down there in Blacksburg. So if anyone has any recommendations for me while I'm down there, by all means. So thanks for having me, Trey. I appreciate it.
I will. And Johnny's also an AP top 25 voter. And when UTSA makes the top 25, he was on the bandwagon first. So I wanted to point that out on this show.
Absolutely. Yeah. UTSA is one that's been, just outside my 25. So, I mean, if they stay undefeated win again, then I'm going to have to get them in there.
Absolutely. So I want to thank everyone for listening to this special edition of the Fast Lane. As always, connect with us at Fastlane at Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and connect with me at Trey Lyle VT, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Thank you so much for listening to this special edition of the Fast Lane.